As we've read previously, we realize that Noah's presence in the ark did not just last 40 days and 40 nights, as many children's storybooks depict. Noah was in the ark for over a year. Man, that's a long time to be closed in to a giant box with nowhere else to go. We continue today in Genesis chapter 8, starting in verse 20 and ending in verse 22. And Noah built an altar unto the Lord. Now notice, being that long in the ark and finally being let free, I can see why he would build an altar. He was so thankful to get out of there. And took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And the Lord smelt a sweet savor. And the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. And this is very disturbing. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing as I have done. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. Let's see if we can unpack this a little bit for our understanding. The first thing Noah did was to build an ark and worship the Lord. Is that what we do first thing every morning? Well, we don't need to build an altar. But how about worshiping the Lord first thing every day? I'm guilty. I don't do it. And I should. I'm thankful for each day that I'm alive. How about you? The sacrifice was also to thank God for preservation and protection. Noah was able to do this sacrifice because of the 7 pairs of the clean beasts he took aboard. It was also an act of faith, trusting in God's provision in a world that appeared to be rugged and desolate, cold and stormy, barren and silent. Noah's sacrifice was indeed, from him, great praise, thanksgiving, and yes, an earnest petition of, give us what we need. The sacrifice offered by a righteous man in faith was acceptable to God, so that God made a note to himself. Notice that we sometimes joke around, note to self. Well, that's what God did. I will never again curse the ground for man's sake. And this is very disturbing, because this is what God said. I will never again curse the ground for man's sake, because the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. And I will not again smite every living thing as I have done. Now, I may be reading too much into this, but saying the Lord said in his heart would confirm that God partly dictated word for word to Moses what he would write during the first 11 chapters. We can't read God's mind. Only God knows what was in his mind. So, of course, he would dictate to Moses what he should write. Furthermore, God admitted that the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. And despite that, he said he would never curse the ground for man's sake, nor would he ever smite every living thing as he had previously done. I would like to take a break here just for a moment and read again what we saw in Genesis chapter 7, verse 23. And I wrote it down here. It said, and every living substance was destroyed, which was upon the face of the ground. And Noah only remained alive. But was it Noah? No, it wasn't just Noah. God recognized Noah only. But what did he add? And they that were with him in the ark. They that were with him in the ark. Noah only remained alive. Folks, it's Noah's righteousness that God recognized. And remember, we entitled that lesson, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And today, the Lord smelled a sweet savor in verse 21. And the Lord said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more everything living as I have done. Folks, here again we see God's extend to man his marvelous grace. Verse 22 adds something else. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. But what else did he say in verse 21? I will not again curse the ground. With the flood, he removed the curse. Hallelujah! We can plant things in the ground and things will grow. Wow! Look at that. God's marvelous grace. In spite of our wickedness, he allows us total freedom. This blows my mind. In spite of seeing our sin and our faults, God extends his grace in an indescribable way. Verse 22 says that seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. Before the great flood, the temperatures were constant, but now we have heat and cold seasons that would continue as long as this earth was in existence. Folks, what God says here is in direct contradiction to the earth-worshipping environmentalists who claim mankind is destroying Earth through global warming and interference of seasons. Folks, God guaranteed that the seasons would exist until the earth ends. Eventually, however, God will renovate the earth and remove all curses altogether, according to Revelation 22, verse 3. Folks, excuse my passion here, but I marvel at how great our God is. Knowing our wickedness, he still extends his grace. His grace. God's riches at Christ's expense. Christ wasn't there then, but God definitely extended his unearned, unmerited favor that only came from his infinite mercy.